As a consequence of an obligation to maintain a vital circulation, then, the sum of debt inherently increases at an ever-escalating rate of ever greater sums of periodic interest on an ever greater sum of debt. So long as we so maintain a vital circulation, the process is irreversible. So the sum of debt inherently and irreversibly increases at an ever-escalating rate until a terminal phase of a finite lifespan is reached, when the costs of servicing the ever-escalating sum of debt encroach upon the capacity to sustain industry. Once the sum of debt exceeds our capacity to service it, our creditworthiness is inherently destroyed. We are no longer qualified or capable of reborrowing further principal and interest to maintain a vital circulation. Thus, the circulation in turn deflates as we make ever more fatal payments against principal and interest obligations and cannot borrow back whatever we pay in servicing the escalating sum of debt to maintain the vital circulation. In turn, ever less and less industry can be sustained, leaving us all the less capable of servicing the debt or replenishing the circulation by further borrowing. Thus, a point of utter failure is reached when the circulation naturally disappears and the subjects are left in an artificial state where they can neither afford to produce or acquire their own production. As it was in the First Worldwide Depression, utter failure, therefore, is perpetual according to the unjustified rules of the imposed system itself. It does not recover itself from utter failure. On the contrary, by usurpation and denied representation, its injustices are simply renewed in disregarding its inevitable wastage to initiate a subsequent implementation of escalating injustice, which can only reach a like end to its course. The mechanics of this thesis of inherent monetary failure, therefore, perfectly explain and match the development and cause of present conditions, even to the present disappearance of the circulation or so-called credit crisis, which is merely a product of inherently compromised creditworthiness in the latter phases of failure. This whole pattern of failure will soon be demonstrated by our model, in which we will see that the thesis proves how and why it is impossible to succeed by present stimulus plans. It proves how and why the system will yet inevitably fail as a consequence of its own imposed improprieties. Identification of the categoric faults, furthermore, demonstrates how all the categoric improprieties of the imposed systems are readily and immediately solved by converting these systems to mathematically perfected economy. Now, who among us would design for the purpose of serving us a system which can only multiply debt in proportion to a vital circulation, until we lost all our production and all our industry to a printing house, which merely published our own promises to pay? Our problem for the last 30 or 40 years, then, is not that these systems cannot be perfected. The common problem of all the people of the world is that those who have imposed these systems without public mandate, representation, or consent strive to preserve these systems of exploitation above and beyond accountability and the very nature, principles, and law of representative government. They want the ever more vast, undeserved takings which this destructive process delivers to them, and to preserve this monumental theft from the world, they work night and day to preserve a worldwide usurpation of representation. Empowered by their vast takings, they own the mainstream media. They alone can finance politicians into power, owing always to them. The present failure, therefore, is no more than a product of this usurpation, veiled in the purposed deception that they serve you by preserving ever-multiplying terminal exploitation. How and why do conventional pretended economies fail? Why are they not economies at all? In fact, we can forwardly project the failure of today's imposed monetary systems with no more difficulty and no less certainty than contemporary banks calculate next month's interest. And if anyone is truly accounting for the ramifications of any proposition of rectification, indeed their models must be so comprehensive. Anyone who has not accounted for the ramifications of interest as the present models have for 25 years is no genuine authority and no genuine advocate of solution. For to be unable to answer unequivocally for the questions we shall momentarily re-answer is to lack the very measure and substance of expertise which solution depends upon. To understand the issues which today's evasive politicians refuse to account for, we will examine how principal, interest, and periodic debt service obligations, together with potential circulatory or industrial growth, determine maximum possible or maximum practical lifespans of any such purported economies. We will account not only for varying rates of each, we will account for potential reductions of the circulation. As Ron Paul and his followers not only advocate interest and elevated rates of interest, but reduced circulations, in weighing the governing math, our models expose the catastrophic consequences of these unqualified propositions. After all, what is to retain the very terminal process in ostensibly competing banks, maintaining even higher rates of interest? So we will soon explore how a given rate of interest determines a maximum possible or maximum practical lifespan. We will explore how lower rates of interest predicate longer maximum possible or maximum practical lifespans. We will explore how higher rates of interest expedite failure. In understanding the pattern of the effects of what we so errantly call interest, we will soon understand how the whole pattern of failure, even under reduced interest rates, is a characteristic of the obfuscated nature of the currency. We will understand why interest rates must be reduced in the later stages of the lifespan. We will understand what conditions comprise the terminal phase. We will understand from this inherent pattern the facades and lies which are intended to perpetuate the system of exploitation. We will understand how and why we can and must immediately transform these imposed systems into mathematically perfected economy.